Welcome, everyone. We're doing another fun episode of Indie Reads Aloud. My new friend Erica Miner is coming back today to read for us. We had a great time the last time she was on the program. She hails all the way from Seattle, Washington, my home state where I was born. So I love finding all these little connections between authors and the books they write and my own personal life. It's kind of like a little treasure hunt. So welcome, Erica. Glad to have you back.
Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure to be here. And, we have that connection that you're actually from here, but I'm actually from Detroit,
Oh,
which is
look at that. It goes back and forth.
so it does. So the connections are double connections. That's pretty rare, I think.
I think it's pretty spectacular. So the last time you were in the program, we had you read from one of your books, and these are the books are called the Julia Kogan Opera Mystery series. And as one might imagine from that title, these are mysteries that have to do with the opera or with the symphony sitting in the pit at the opera, or maybe all of the above.
Hmm.
What I know that you were a musician by trade and you spent many years playing professionally with Metropolitan Opera and other symphonies around the country. What made you decide that you were going to turn music into murder?
Well, the atmosphere in an opera house is quite unique. I've always said that it's the perfect atmosphere for mischief and mayhem. And when you think about it, what goes on the stage, there's a lot of murder and a lot of mystery in the operas themselves. So it's kind of like logical that I
Yeah.
want to give the reader an insider's view of what goes on behind the scenes. There's the glamour, and of course, the Met is the most glamorous of them all. There's the glamour of what the audience sees, but then there is all the infighting that goes on backstage with the detestable divas and the snarky stagehands and the orchestra people that are at each other's throats for one reason or another. And so, in my wicked writer's imagination, it all kind of started escalating into ideas about, well, what if these murderous ideas and feelings between people who work there actually increased to a point where it was murder? And it didn't seem impossible. So I thought,
Well, anything's possible in a theater of any variety. After having done professional theater for years, I clearly understand this. Um, and I love the idea of the backstage aspect, because even with some of our most popular, well-known operas, not everybody understands what's going on while the performance is running
exactly.
behind the scenes and hiding in the wings and hiding in dressing rooms. So I am particularly drawn to your series for that component.
Thank you. You're right. Hiding in dressing rooms, hiding in back stairways and dark hallways, and especially certain opera houses like we talked about last time, San Francisco Opera. It's the oldest of all these opera houses where my books take place, and it's creepy. There are
Yeah.
parts of it down there in the basement that are just plain creepy. And I thought,
There's
you know,
yeah, there's a reason that the ghost lamp is a tradition that few of us want to test.
yeah, yeah, there's that whole ghost light thing, which is fascinating, and all these kinds of prejudices and superstitions, and it all gets blown out of proportion with these mad, crazy actors and singers and musicians and
Yeah, because drama is their life, right?
art imitates life and vice versa. And I thought
Sure.
it all works for me, and
Yeah.
evidently readers think so as well.
Yeah, it's a really fun idea for a series. So tell us a little bit about Julia Kogan. Who is she and how did you come to find her on your pages?
Julia is actually admittedly or started out as a kind of a clone of Erica when Erica was in her 20s and starting off at the Met and very naive and idealistic and thinking that she is going to actually be performing with the most prestigious opera company in the world. I mean, she's just at the beginning of the series, as you will hear, she's excited beyond belief. And I thought, that's exactly the way I felt. I couldn't believe I was there. And I thought she just had to be the protagonist because I could then write everything from a point of view that I was intimately familiar with, to say the least. So that is how it started out as a character. As far as her name, Julia is the name of one of my best friend in the Met chorus. Her daughter was Julia, so I thought that was
Okay.
a logical name. And Kogan is the name of a very, very famous violinist who was famous when I was growing up and first studying the violin, Leonid Kogan. And I thought I'd put the two together, and voila, there is Julia. And in Aria for Murder, as you will hear, it starts off on Julia's very first night, her opening night, her debut performance with the Met, and she's beyond excited. She just doesn't know that something terrible is about to happen.
Well, that sounds like the perfect segue to get into the reading. So when you are ready, please, Miss Erica Miner, please take the microphone and read aloud from Aria for Murder. This is book one in the Julia Kogan Opera Mystery series.
Thank you, Diane. I'm delighted to. I just, as a bit of a prelude to this, I just wanted to mention that in all of my books, before each chapter, there's a different opera quote, first in the original language and then in the translation, that kind of foreshadows what may be happening in that chapter. So I had a,
Oh, you left Easter eggs. Perfect.
yes, I had a great time choosing these quotes because, of course, after 21 years at the Met, I knew pretty much inside out these operas and what the best ones would be. So for this reading, I'm going to start out with a quote from Don Giovanni by Mozart, first in Italian. Chi è morto, voi o il vecchio? Che domanda da bestia, il vecchio. Who's dead, you or the old man? What an idiotic question, the old man. Prologue. Collateral damage. Sometimes it just can't be avoided. That was what his partner had told him. When you're trying to kill someone, other people can get in the way. It's not planned, it just happens. Though the Metropolitan Opera's orchestra pit was the largest in the world, when the orchestration of an opera was vast, as in Wagner or Strauss, things could get quite crowded for the 100 or so musicians squeezed together there. Tonight's Verdi was no exception. Grand opera at its loftiest, with plenty of brass, extra strings, and the like. He would do his best to hit his target precisely, but it wasn't an exact science. And if, under pressure, he was slightly off, well, tanto peggio, as they say in French. He chortled to himself. Everyone in the Met knew tanto peggio was Italian, not French. He salivated with anticipation as he lovingly cleaned his Val Russian sniper rifle with its special bronze-bristled brush and oiled and lubricated the ammunition chamber with the fine spray one-shot gun cleaner and a cotton swab. He picked up the last tiny fragments of powder residue with an alcohol patch threaded through a needle attached to the brush. Then he polished the entire instrument with one of his special order McAllister microfiber gun cleaning cloths. If you look after your firearm when the time comes, it will look after you. A vintage model, no longer available. The Val was precious, but not because of its monetary or historic value. It was his own personal Stradivarius, a thing of beauty, a state-of-the-art example of genius in design at its time, and still as reliable as ever. He knew that the cartridge of this rifle, with the immense power contained within its barrel, was capable of forcing a bullet to explode at a higher speed than a mere handgun, the kind of velocity he needed to accomplish his goal. Lord knows I need something dependable and powerful. No one knew he kept the Val right inside the opera house, practically under everyone's noses, to head off the possibility that they might install metal detectors at the Met, which everyone seemed to be doing these days. He had found the perfect hiding place for his beloved firearm in a far-off corner away from prying eyes. It remained there at the ready, just in case he needed it. No one was aware of its existence, let alone its hidden location, except me and my partner. And what better time for an assassination than opening night at the Met? My partner is a brilliant planner. I will do my part. Justice will be served, finally. With a sigh, he wrapped his instrument in its plush chamois cloth and painstakingly laid it in its temporary resting place beside its smaller sibling, the Beretta. It won't be long now, my trusted friend. It won't be long. Chapter 1. Julia threaded her way through the waiting crowds of patrons in front of the Metropolitan Opera House, her violin case strapped to her shoulder. She stopped for a moment to gaze wide-eyed at the parade of celebrities being disgorged from their limos onto Lincoln Plaza and the paparazzi jostling each other to capture the ultimate photograph. I can't believe I'm here. As she passed the legendary fountain and approached the front entrance of the Met, Julia glimpsed the street violinist in his usual location, giving a passionate rendition of the fiendish showpiece Die Gornerweisen. Despite his brilliant playing, he was ignored by the throng. Clearly, he deserved something for his efforts. She watched for a moment, then she opened her violin case, extracted her violin and bow, and started to accompany him. Passers-by began to stop and listen and toss bills into the street violinist's open case. He and Julia exchanged smiles. Then she packed up her violin and moved on. How lucky am I to have a real job with a weekly paycheck. This evening, the night of her first performance as a violinist with the Met Orchestra, Julia was seized by the desire to enter the opera house through the front doors on Lincoln Plaza before proceeding to the stage door artist entrance. The revolving glass doors overlooking the plaza afforded a much more elegant entrance, and she desperately wanted to be among the opening night glitterati. The stage door can wait. I'm going in with the paying customers tonight. Julia gently squeezed past a chic older patron in a fox stole and diamond necklace and inhaled the woman's heady perfume. From her position in front of the giant glass windows that revealed activity inside the Met lobby, Julia could see the distinguished cavalcade sweeping through the doors and up the circular Italian marble staircases, past the red velvet topped walls and underneath the famed Austrian lead crystal chandeliers. She took a moment to admire the immense 40-foot Chagall murals, the signature of the Met's facade that distinguished the Opera House from all others. Their brilliant colors displayed the French-Russian painter's genius to New York's Lincoln Center and to the world. Much as the Eiffel Tower represented the genius of late 19th century French engineering, these exquisite paintings stood as a monument to music, inspiring admiration and awe. A pair of life-size glass-enclosed posters standing guard in front of the Met's massive glass doors heralded the evening's performance. Metropolitan Opera, gala opening night performance, Verdi's Don Carlo. Abel Trudeau, conductor, sold out. Something tells me things will never again be the same after this night. As she gazed at the Don Carlo posters, Julia contemplated how she had overcome every possible obstacle to be there among the creme de la creme of New York musicians. But she knew in her heart that she owed her career to the great maestro, Abel Trudeau. As her mentor, Abel had nurtured Julia's musical gifts since she was a child. Because of his unwavering attention, she had developed a single-minded confidence in her ability to function under pressure in auditions and performances, which gave her an edge over her fellow Juilliard students. Many of them, the female musicians especially, resented her talent, not to mention her beauty. But Julia decided early on that making Abel proud far outranked the social acceptance of her peers. Abel had looked after her and remained closer to her than any other person. Julia sensed, since he had no family of his own, perhaps she was his daughter substitute. If so, it was a role she was happy to play. Not even her perennial sadness at her own father's passing could keep her from focusing on her goal, to please Abel and be a part of his prestigious orchestra. Remember, Julia, never let anyone undermine your confidence in your abilities, and always think beyond the notes. Be true to the music and to yourself. As Abel had predicted, Julia blew away her competition at the grueling round of Met auditions and won almost unanimous praise from the judges. At age 22, she became the youngest member of the Met Orchestra. I'll be in Abel's debt forever. There's nothing I wouldn't do for him. Putting such musings out of her mind, Julia entered the stage door and approached the security guard station. She was not surprised to notice extra guards patrolling the area. Between the assemblage of stars on stage and bigwigs like New York's mayor, rumored to be in the audience that evening, security was super tight. To enter, everyone was required to tap their ID card on a device that brought up all their info on a screen for the security guard to check and make sure they were who they claimed to be. Julia fished for her Met ID in her pocketbook, removed it, and tapped it on the magnetic device. And at that exact moment, Sidney Richter squeezed past her, waving his ID in haste, jostling her, and hurrying off without so much as an apology. Julia was miffed. Where are your manners, Sid? A jaded first violin section veteran in his late 40s, Sid was Julia's frequent stand partner and her best friend in the orchestra. Julia found his distinctive wire-rimmed glasses and curly graying wild man hair oddly appealing, but she could not fathom how he managed to bypass the security procedure required of normal personnel, and he complained constantly. The pay is too low, the hours are too long, and why did Abel have to add the extra 45 minutes of music to Don Carlo? Christ, it's already long enough. Don Carlo was Julia's favorite Verdi opera. She inwardly agreed it was too long, but still defended Abel. You know he's a stickler for doing operas uncut, Sid. Sidney had reason to object. Sitting through the longer operas irritated his diverticulitis, causing him to get up and rush to the men's room. The other musicians griped, but as Sid was consistently protective toward her, Julia felt sympathetic toward him. Nonetheless, she frowned at the guard with mock bravado. How come he gets in with the wave, but not me? Sid flashed her a quick smile. You're just a newbie. Give it a couple decades. Julia rolled her eyes at Sid and pivoted back to the guard. Is that fair? But when she turned back, the older violinist had already dashed through the gate and disappeared down the stairway toward pit level. Julia scurried to catch up with him. Oh, Mr. Rabbit. On her way to the women's locker room, Julia paused in front of Abel's dressing room. She glimpsed the Maestro Trudeau do not disturb sign posted on the door and felt a little flutter of excitement as she glanced at her watch. Half an hour, and he'll give the downbeat for my first performance. Even with the door closed, though, she could easily distinguish the raised voices from behind it as Abel and Sidney's. You son of a bitch. For God's sake, Sidney, keep it down. You said you'd leave her out of it. She's too precious to risk anything happening to her. Abel lowered his voice. I had no choice. Over my dead body. Julian knew about the personality conflict between Sidney and Abel, but couldn't comprehend what caused it. Yes, Sid was hot-headed, but the discord between these two all-important men in her life made her uncomfortable. She thought about the fact that Abel was a few years older and thus a bit wiser than Sid, as she struggled to make out what they were saying. You and I go back long enough to understand that this changes everything, Sid. Yeah, well, I told you long ago this mess would come back to bite you. Perhaps, but if something happens to either or both of us, someone has to know the truth, and that someone must be Julia. They're fighting about me? How are you going to tell her without scaring her to death? She's had more than her share of troubles. I found a way. All you have to do is deal with it. Deal with it? Up yours, Abel. Sid's voice escalated. If anything happens to Julia, I swear, Abel, I'll write a whole new finale to your opening night. A whole new finale? What does that mean? The trouble with you, Sidney, is you think you're too damned important. Abel's voice was so low and menacing, Julia could hardly hear it. No one is indispensable around here. Now get the hell out of my dressing room. We've got a show to do. Curtain for Don Carlo in 30 minutes. The sudden booming sound of the PA system made Julia jump. Then the door opened. Sidney stormed out of the dressing room, slamming the door behind him, and ran right into her. How long have you been there, kid? He demanded. His dark tone alarmed her. What's going on, Sid? Why were you and Abel going at it again? Since when do you answer a question with a question? His expression remained grim. Can't you two just call the truth already, please? You're acting like a jerk. Julia tried to charm him with a smile. She could tell from his sheepish grin she'd won him over. Look, kid, it's what parents do. Suspended in the highest reaches of the theater, the viewing room was the exclusive domain of directors, set designers, and other company members to watch rehearsals and performances, either for critical purposes or for their own entertainment. The sliding glass windows overlooking the theater allowed a bird's eye view, but were built so that outsiders could not easily see inside. This opening night, the viewing room was locked up, officially closed for repairs and off limits for everybody. That made it easy for the shadowy figure to break open the padlock with lock clippers during the third act without being seen or heard, enter, assemble a Val Russian sniper rifle, poke it through the sliding window, and aim it toward the pit. Julia always had to prepare herself for the dramatic Act 3 moment when the baritone comes to warn the tenor of a dangerous plot against his life. An assassin wielding a medieval rifle or arquebus moves stealthily on stage to fire at the baritone. Just as he sings, Ed io morire per te, and I to die for you, the singer falls to the floor, mortally wounded. Julia snapped to attention when Abel's impassioned conducting gestures increased in urgency. It was almost time for the gunshot heralding the assassination of the baritone's character on stage. The first time she had heard the onstage shot during rehearsal, it was so loud it had rattled her, causing her to miss several notes. Why do they make it so loud? She'd asked this head stagehand. The decibel level of stage rifles is impossible to control. You never know how loud it's going to be, he'd explained. At least they're shooting with blanks. This fact comforted her. Still, she couldn't help girding herself, readying in advance for the shock. But as she steeled for the coming blast, something unusual caught her eye, coming from the upper reaches of the theater, a metallic glint.
Okay, we were talking about leaving us on a cliffhanger, but you didn't really have to take that to heart now, did ya?
Yes, I did.
Excellent reading. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I, as I said before the last time you were on the program, how much I really love this concept of a story that happens inside the theater. Um, but as I hear you read this opening piece to the first book, because last time it was the third book.
Mhm.
So I'm starting to get that. It's kind of like going back and watching a TV series from the beginning when you cut it near the end. So I'm wondering now, connecting the dots from this program to the last one with book 3, um, can you share with us what Julia Kogan's fatal flaw is? What is the thing that always seems to get her tripped up or in trouble?
I think her fatal flaw is that her sense of justice overcomes her better judgment. So if she sees something that she feels is unfair or something has been done, like, for instance, a murder at the opera house, she can't help but get involved. She somehow feels she has to save the day, even though at this point in the first book, she has absolutely no experience whatsoever in murder investigations. But somehow, especially when someone who is very near and dear to her becomes involved and actually becomes a suspect in this investigation, she absolutely cannot help herself. She just has to get involved. And this is a fatal flaw that keeps going all through the series. When something happens, Julia to the rescue, even though she herself is going to be in danger.
So, flip side of that, what do you think is her greatest strength? What is the thing that keeps her going through these 3 books with murder and mayhem and just the unknowing happening from performance to performance? What is that strength that gives her that resiliency?
I think her strength is that she believes in herself and she believes in the ultimate supremacy of good over evil. So that no matter what happens, she believes that it's all going to turn out well. And one of the reasons for this is that she's been through a lot of tragedy in her young life. She lost her father under very tragic circumstances and has had to, with also the death of her mother at an early age. So she's an orphan, having to fend for herself at a very early age. So she's learned to be strong. And she doesn't realize, though, until she comes up with something as deeply dangerous as a murder investigation, she doesn't realize that she has that inner strength to keep going no matter what. So I think that's her best.
I think it's very interesting that Julia Kogan's tenacity is the thing that sustains her and gets her into trouble.
Funny thing about that.
I think that's a wonderful way to handle that characterization, to give both sides of it to her rather than making her one or the other. So
Yeah,
well done.
thank you.
I'm so glad you came back on the program, and I know that you're going to be coming back again to read from book 2 for us. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Diana. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.